Hey, guys, it is Alison. I am the host of your show, Alison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hello there, how are you guys today? I am right now waiting for my next guest to come in. And when this beautiful soul comes into our waiting room, I'm going to bring her in and we're going to actually do therapy. So this is the first time on the podcast that I'm going to be doing public therapy. So the public therapy will be this young woman sharing her life and her story and a particular issue or concern in her life that she really wants to transform. And there's something super valuable about having a person in front of you. So you will be witnesses to this young woman's struggle in many different areas. I'm not sure which area we're going to talk about, but we're going to dive deep. You know, she's given me permission. She's given consent for all of you to be onlookers in a one-time guest therapeutic session with me. I don't see clients anymore. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I run counseling centers and supervise all different therapists. But this is something that I'm really looking forward to, because witnessing and participating in her growth and hearing as an observer will give you an opportunity to see things in yourself. So I ask that you take that time as you're listening to really consider how this applies to you, even if you're a different age or a different sex, or you have a different circumstance. Most of the principles of recovery and growth and change can be applied to all different situations. So just sit back, and if you want to take notes, and try to be mindful of what comes up for you, because very often it does bring up your own things when you're observing something like this. So without any further ado, I am going to bring on my guest. Hey guys, how are you today? It is Alison from Alison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. Today we're doing something a little different. We are going to have a therapeutic session, like a guest therapeutic session. So what that means is, for anyone who doesn't know what I do, most of you do, but I have been a therapist for all of my adult life, and I run counseling centers. And I now decided that on this podcast, which is about crushing mediocrity, it's about changing our lives and creating the life that we actually want. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to ask you to be an onlooker, a person that's an observer of someone else doing the work, the therapeutic work, to learn about themselves so that they can change their lives. So what I've shared with you guys before, and it's a very important concept, what I want you to understand is that every single one of us can change our lives no matter what, okay? So we usually get duped into believing that we cannot change our lives, that we're stuck, that we're trapped, that the pattern that we're in is just never going to end. But I can 100% promise you that if you decide to change the way you think, if you pivot from the feelings that you're addicted to, from the patterns you're addicted to, you can change any aspect of your life and you can make it better. So this is the thing. The only way to do that is you have to know the truth. So what I'm going to be doing with this fine young lady is I'm going to help her to see the truth about herself, to help her to understand herself more fully. So what a therapist is really supposed to do, so if you're in therapy, remember this, it's an important thing to note when you're looking for a therapist is you want someone who's going to be an expert question asker, someone who's going to seek to really understand you to the deepest part of yourself so that you can make better decisions about your life and you can change the way that you're automated and the way that you have been programmed as a child. So the guest that I have today is Michelle. I'm not going to share her last name. She doesn't care if I share her last name, but just for who knows, like 10, 15 years down the line, she'll be like, holy shit, what the hell did I do? So I'm just covering all my bases. This is Michelle G. And I asked Michelle to come on as she's actually the first person I'm going to do therapy online with. So this is a big deal. And really, we are just going to act like you're not here. And we're going to have an honest, open conversation about whatever is troubling Michelle, any pattern in her life that she really wants to make a difference in. So welcome to the show, Michelle. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm going to put on my therapist glasses so I can see her better. So can you tell us what area of your life do you really, really want to make a shift in? What do you want to change?
Forming healthy relationships, whether that's with friends or boyfriends. Definitely forming healthy, long-lasting relationships.
Okay. Can you tell everyone how old you are?
26.
26 years old. So do you feel like you have had healthy relationships in your life?
For the most part, no. I have a few solid people that I could say yes, but for the most part, no.
How would you define a healthy relationship?
I think mutual respect for each other. A lot of honesty. I'm big, especially with my age, the saying one thing to your face and then saying something else when you're not around to somebody else. I feel like if you can't be honest to that person to their face, then that's kind of can lead to a lot of toxicity and miscommunication, where it's if you say something talking like bad or agitated about somebody down the road and it's like not directly to that person, and then you find out that they were talking about you and it's just like a whole big mess.
Okay, so that makes me think that that's happened to you or it's happening to you. Is that
it's happened in the past? Yes.
Okay, so there's a few things I just want to point out. And this is kind of because people are listening. I want people to understand that when you say, I'm looking for mutual respect, what I think of, the first thing I think of is that we have to know what that actually even means. Because we use a lot of language. So you could mean one thing about respect and I could mean something else. So when you say mutual respect, and then you define that you want to know that the person's consistent and when they're speaking to you and when they're not with you. Right? Is that how you would define respect?
I think for me, that's at least what I've struggled with, but there are a lot of different aspects. I think especially now I have a healthy friendship. My best friend Brittany is like the first real healthy relationship, and my best friend Brandon. Those are really the only two friendships that I have that like I feel like there's no judgment from them. I feel like that's kind of a big thing too. Like respect is like respecting the person for who they are, you know, and nobody's perfect. So like I respect them for all their positive and negatives, you know, like, and they accept me for all my positive and negatives. Like nobody's perfect. And I feel like that hasn't always been the case.
You mean in your life with other people?
Yeah. Yeah.
You feel like you were judged by others?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, you know, to me, being accepted is one of the most important things in a relationship, being understood. You know, and once judged, it's really hard to have a good relationship with someone, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your history? Do you have a history with friendships where you couldn't trust that they accepted you or that they would be consistent in what they felt about you?
I have a lot of social anxiety because I got bullied when I was younger. So I feel like I'm always worrying about what people are saying about me. Do people like me? And like I worry too much as it is. And then throughout college, I would find people where it's like you think everything's good and you think everything's fine, and then like you have other people come to you and then they're like, oh well, they said this, and I'm like, well, I didn't know she felt that way, you know? So it could be a totally different perspective from one person to the other, and like if you don't communicate that directly, it could just be like a messy situation.
Yeah. Do you think from being bullied that that has impacted like the people that you've chosen to be with? I know that now you have some
Right.
good friendships, but
Yeah.
that can definitely impact who you end up
Yeah.
with in your life.
Oh,
Right?
100%. And I definitely gravitated towards more toxic people in college. Um, I think mostly just because I just wanted friends, to be honest. Like I didn't really have many friends in high school, middle school. I was never really like popular or anything like that. So I kind of just wanted a friend.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like it was really whoever was like willing to be that friend. It's
Mm.
like, okay, so I was always aware that they had toxic traits. It's not like I was oblivious to them. I think I just wanted the friendship more, you know.
Yeah. You know, you just hit such a very impactful the statement that you just made should be illuminated for all young people, all young women, because some of the key points that you just brought out is about you know, your willingness to abandon yourself or betray yourself in order to just be liked or loved, you know. And
Yep,
also the
absolutely.
other thing is the worrying about what other people think is one it's a plague among really among women. It's a very
Yeah,
big issue, and I
absolutely.
think men as well. So like when you say that you saw the warning signs, so this is the thing, you saw the toxicity and you went because you needed to be
Yep.
connected, you needed the
Yep. And
closeness.
I saw how they treated other people. So I knew that if they treat other people like that, I'm no different. Like they
Yeah.
could treat, and they treated so-called friends
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I knew, and I like to consider myself a smart girl. So I wasn't oblivious to that fact. I just kind of went in and I was like, yeah, I'd rather just have a friend than have nobody at all.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You know, that right there can also translate, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. It can translate into relationships, like, you know, with you know, romantic relationships. It's
Yeah.
a very, very common thing. So if you
Mhm.
think about, look at how you were coming up, right? You were bullied. So how did you feel about yourself when you were a little girl from 0 to 7, 0 to 10? What was your sense of worth?
0 to 7, 0 to 10 was good because I had a good childhood. I always did struggle socially, but I feel like it didn't really hit because when you're younger and like as an elementary teacher, I can kind of like attest to this fact that when you're younger, like you kind of almost get along with everyone a lot more, you know, easy, I guess easier. So like if you didn't necessarily have a lot of friends, you still always got invited to all the birthday parties. You still always everybody got a Valentine's card. So it's not really until you hit like 5th grade, middle school that the cliques really start to form. So I had a very solid support system at home and with my family. So I feel like I didn't really notice the social aspect as much when I was 0 to 7, 0 to 10.
Okay, this is very, very common. It's a common issue. So what I want to say about it is that I'm not sure if you know this, but from 0 to 7, your brain wave is in a theta wave. And what that means is it's in a hypnotic state, meaning it's a very suggestible state. So during that period of time in your life, you're being programmed. So, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, you're supposed to be programmed because we need to learn all the different things that we need to learn in our life. We don't know anything when we're born. We need to learn to do everything. We might have even discussed this at some other time, but basically, so what happens is there's a framework developed and an unconscious belief system that's developed between 0 to 7 years old. That's, you know, laid there. So you learned between 0 to 7 some things, and you were describing, as soon as I hear somebody say I have a good childhood, I always ask, because good can mean a million different things.
Mm-hmm.
Good to me could mean mom stays home and cooks, makes you brownies after whatever, or
Yep.
to someone else it could mean my mother was a badass, whatever, she worked in the city. I don't know. But to you, when you say that you had a good childhood, I want to ask you,
Mhm.
what was your relationship? What did you learn by being in your family of origin? What did you learn about the way people interact with one another? What did you learn about the way men and women
Mhm.
treat one another and interact with one another? What did you learn?
Well, I always joke that I was probably too sheltered and too loved as a kid because
Okay.
I'm an only child and
Oh,
I'm also the only granddaughter on
okay.
my dad's side. So not only did I have my mom and dad, but I had my nanny and poppy, like always showing me the constant love, the constant affection. And like my parents had a great relationship, but talking about them like as separate people, they were both very loving, very supportive, like almost too much, where it's like not realistic in the adult world because that's just not how the adult world works. Like, you're not going to be as spoiled and doted upon when you're the only child, the only girl, the only baby. So I feel like I was raised to be like very showered with affection, very, very loved. I was never spoiled. I was raised with, like, I mean, I got material things. I got probably more than other kids because they didn't have to spend money on multiple children. But I was always raised with manners, and like if you're gonna act like a brat, you're gonna get it taken away. So it wasn't really like a spoiled type of childhood and like a bratty type of thing. It was more just I was kind of sheltered from the outside world because I was just in my own little bubble of like mom and dad love me and like I have everything I need right here. So it's like I didn't want to go away to college. I struggled making friends, especially my own age. Like I was always very good with adults when I was younger because I was always around like my mom and my dad and my family. But I didn't even really have cousins that I hung out with. My cousins are older than me, and my other cousins were not around when I was younger.
Were you
So I
lonely?
really,
Did you
yeah,
feel lonely? You did?
absolutely, absolutely, yeah, definitely.
What did you witness when you were just in your life, in your home? What did you witness in regard to the way adults interacted with one another? Because you knew how people were interacting with you, but like
Yeah.
how, what was it like with them? What did you learn from the way they interacted?
I feel like, I feel like I don't remember a lot of it, but it always seemed very healthy. Like I always felt like I had an easier time communicating with adults or people that were older than me than people my own age. Because I guess I just saw adults interact and like it was always easy conversations, easy interactions. There were never like a fights. I mean, of course, parents have little tiffs here and there, but it was like my parents hardly ever fought, or there was very little aggression in conversations. They were all very normal, pleasant conversations from what I saw. And of course, parents always, if they're not, those are conversations they tried to hide from their children.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I noticed that when I asked that question, that your response was that were they nice or not nice? Were they, and really what I'm
Mhm.
asking is what did you learn? So that could be anything like, oh, I learned that men and women don't fight. I learned that men and women, I heard you say, married people have tips. They have fights every now and then. These are things you learned because you're
Yeah.
telling me them. So I'm
Yep.
going a little bit deeper. Like,
Yep.
so, what did you learn about people talking about other people? Now, the reason I asked that question is because what you brought up about your childhood. So, you
Yep.
may not have ever heard that, but did you ever hear, like, I don't know, your grandmother talking about a neighbor? Or I'm just curious. Did you ever see
Yeah.
anything like that?
Not very often. Not
Okay.
very often. Yeah.
What do you mean not very often? Did you ever hear it? I'm just
I
curious.
mean, yeah. I think everybody has the tendency to talk about people every once in a while.
Okay.
So, but I don't really remember, nothing sticks out in my memory of like anybody like talking about really anybody else.
Okay. What did
Yeah.
you what did you feel about yourself in your family? What did you feel about your value and your worth?
Um I mean, in my immediate family, definitely just like I was like daddy's little princess. And I was the whole world. And like, even like my grandparents and everything. And like, my aunt is very loving, always has been. So I feel like I was very loved in my family. I felt like I was important, like part of that group. So then same thing, like when I go out into the real world, I'm like, how come everybody else doesn't love me this much?
That's a very good point. It's a
Yeah.
very good point. You
Yeah.
know, and it's, you know, that, and when I first met you, when we first spoke, one of the things I noticed about you, you know, your willingness to come on and your willingness to talk showed me that there's some foundational thing inside of you. Even if you're having struggles with other people, there's something inside of you where you value yourself, because, you
Oh,
know, you're not like afraid to get on here and have a conversation, which,
no.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I also think that it's normal, like whether people can identify specifically with what I'm saying or not, or like whether it's another issue that they're going through, like everybody has something. So
Yes.
I feel like me talking about my issues, that's why like I'm very open with my anxiety and depression and all those things, because they're real. People have them. It doesn't make me any less of a person. It just makes me a person. And I feel like everybody likes to sweep it under the rug, and I personally just think that that's not helpful. I'm like, I'm more of the person who it's like, let's talk about it. Let's not pretend it's not there, because it is there. So let's talk about it. Let's address it. And then maybe we can make everybody else feel more comfortable, because it's easy to get stuck in that mindset of this only happens to me. Why is this only happening to me? Why am I so different? When in reality, like, you're not. It's just nobody talks about it.
Yeah. And I love that you're able to do that, especially, you know, because that could be something that could happen to an only child. Like, oh, is this just me? I'm looking
Yeah.
out at the rest of the world.
Yeah.
How come no one else is experiencing this? Let me ask you about your being bullied. How were you bullied, if you don't mind me asking?
Um, I never found really a solid friend group, and it was more just for little things. I think it was because I didn't fit into a specific group, so it's like any oddity of me or anything that was different, especially in middle school, like anything that's different is basically bad, like an automatic no-no. Like conforming is the number one thing. So for me, like I got bullied. The first memory of me being bullied was like I got bullied in middle school because I didn't want to wear jeans because they were uncomfortable. So I would always wear sweatpants. And they're like, why don't you wear jeans? And I'm like, because it's 7:30 in the morning and I'm 12. Like, who am I trying to impress? Like, like, why do I care? And then like in high school, all the girls are like, oh my gosh, like leggings. I hate jeans. Leggings are so much better, when leggings became a thing. And I was like, you bullied me for doing the same thing 5 years ago, but like, here we
Yeah.
are.
Would they make fun of you?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think that affected you?
It just made me always question like what I'm doing and like the words I'm saying. Cause even like if I said something in class or whatever, like the group of girls behind me would laugh and they'd be like, oh my gosh, like, did you just hear what she said? So like I always think, I'm like, are they like when I say something, I'm like, oh, I sounded so stupid. Like, why'd you say that? You sound like an idiot. Like, oh my God, they think you're so weird, Michelle. Like, why are you like, just be normal? Like, I always just like judge myself, like after I have a conversation, especially like if I first meet someone, I'm like, why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? Like, they're going to think you're weird now. Like, I'm always just like in my head, like worrying about how they'll perceive anything I'm saying, doing, wearing, anything.
You know, I'll tell you something right there. That is right. What you just discussed, that is such a big issue that people have. And the fact that you're bringing it out, so many people are second guessing themselves. And, you know, people will, after even a therapy session, people will leave and be like, wow, I shouldn't have said that. Or,
Mm,
you know, because shame kicks in,
yeah.
you know, and children are wet cement. So when you hear something in childhood, you would be surprised how long you can still believe things about yourself. If somebody says something about your nose or about your thighs, I remember somebody when I was
Mhm.
10 years old said that, oh, you have fat thighs or something. Do you know that I felt like I had fat thighs for like the
Oh, of
entirety of my
course.
life? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's a very important thing to remember, is that as we're programmed in our younger years, when our thoughts are on they're electrical impulses on a loop. So
Yeah.
what will happen is anything that resonates with that thought or that experience will initiate those thoughts again.
Yeah.
And it's really, and basically the way to change it is literally to pivot away from those thoughts, almost like it's a drug. You will go through withdrawal not thinking those thoughts,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
if you think about how do you think being bullied has impacted your life? Like, what has it done in your relationships? Because it kind of paved the way for you to choose your college friendships too, if you think about it.
Yeah, I feel like it was more just like my self-esteem, and like you always like you that like that saying, you accept the love you think you deserve.
Hmm.
So it's like I didn't have friends. I didn't have a baseline of like how I should be treated in a friendship, or so I feel like I didn't have much self-esteem, much self-confidence when it came to any social interactions, even literally until college. Like college was really my first time that people actually like started treating me like a person, because it wasn't the same clique that I was with since I was 5 years old of elementary school, middle school, high school. It was just a fresh start, and people actually were talking to me. And I changed so much in college because I was like, oh my gosh, like this is how people interact. So I kind of went into college with like a totally clean slate of just kind of experiencing what it's like to like form friendships for the first time.
Yeah. But and it's interesting when you formed some of those friendships, some of them were toxic, right? They were
Yeah.
like, yeah. But you know what's interesting? Think about it this way. If you think about what paved your way and what you learned about yourself, this is what I try to get people to see, is that when you look at your life right now, any one of us, we
Yeah.
look at ourselves relationally, socially, financially,
Hmm.
spiritually, emotionally, right now, you take a snapshot today,
Yep.
that is a mirror that mirrors back to us what we've been thinking, feeling, and believing up
Yeah.
until now.
Yeah.
So, does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And I mean, it's gotten a lot worse. I mean, I'm getting better now, but I went through, I'd say after my breakup, my like with my first serious boyfriend was when everything kind of started going wrong for me. And that's like
How long
when
ago was that?
2.5 years ago, 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't even have, I always had anxiety, but I never had depression until we broke up. And I thought I was going to marry him. I thought he was the love of my life, future father of my children, everything. And I didn't know anything was wrong until he said the words, "We need a break." And I was like, what? Like, totally got blindsided, life flipped upside down. And it just ended out of nowhere. And he was my whole life. We were together for 3 years, and that was my first love, my first real relationship. So I invested all of my happiness in him. It was one of those relationships where it's like, oh, like if I don't have you, I'm gonna die. And
Yeah,
like after
right.
after having that relationship, I'm like, okay, well, I can't be like that in a relationship again, because if it ends, I literally won't survive. Like I wanted to actively kill myself once that relationship ended, because I was like, I don't know how to live a life that you're not in, and like I don't, I'm never going to be happy again because you're not in my life.
Yeah.
So I've struggled a lot with that healing process, and then also struggling to find love and not finding it. And like I've I always, it's very easy to go back to that headspace of when you first were in that breakup of like, oh, I just, well, one, I wish it worked out with him because this was the only relationship that I ever had that was good. So it's like, why did that get messed up? And then like, what's the issue with me? Because clearly nobody wants to be with me. So like, why am I the problem? Like, and then it's always like, why do I attract people who treat me like this? And it's just like a constant spin and cycle of emotions.
Do you think that, so is that happening in your life now? Those thoughts, do they still recur?
Less frequently
Yeah.
than they used to. They used to be way worse.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yep.
So let me ask you about, so this guy that you were with for 3 years, right? What could you describe that relationship to me? Describe who, kind of what he was like. Are you okay with that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let me hear about it. I'm
It,
going to write some
at
things
least
down.
at least from my perspective, and like, I mean, like everybody around us, it was literally a perfect relationship. Like everyone thought we were endgame. Everyone thought we were getting married.
What
We
made them think that?
we were attached to the hip all the time, like seeing each other 24/7, talking to each other 24/7. We've very rarely argued. We were very affectionate, a lot of words of affirmation, like constantly like telling each other I love you, like my sappy Instagram post about how much I love him,
Yeah.
and like social media can lead to a lot. So like after, if you were following me on Instagram and you saw that we broke up, you would have been like, excuse me, that's all you've been posting about for the last 3 years. Like you guys in Disney being in like the prime of your life, like being
Yes.
so in love.
Yeah.
Like after seeing that for 3 years, you wouldn't necessarily think that it was gonna end. And we just clicked very, very well. It was very easy to be with each other. It was very natural to see a future with one another. So it was, yeah, I mean, it was great. I really, even to this day, because I was so blindsided by it, and I really just think he got afraid of the commitment so young, and he wanted to be single because now he just goes out and gets drunk with his boys every weekend. And I'm like, if that's what you wanted, like, go do you. But like, I don't think he was ready for I think he kind of just got scared of like being in a serious relationship that young, because by 3 years,
did he tell you that?
he told me that later on. At first he tried to blame his depression as like a way to weasel out.
Did
and
he
he's like,
have
well,
was he in a depression?
I didn't notice it, although his mom passed away when he was 10 and he never went to therapy for it. So it was definitely a well-known fact that like he should have gone to therapy when he was younger to work all these issues out about the death of his mother, because he still was not fully healed. I mean, how could it ever be fully healed? But like, that's a big thing to deal. So
that was part of the reason that you were attached at the hip?
I think so, because looking back, I was definitely like half his mom, half his girlfriend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like,
and if you look at it also that you were also an only child and he had this loss, and and you felt loneliness. I'm just curious about that, because very often when I hear people describe like a perfect relationship, I always want to know more about it. I want to know like what wasn't perfect.
The sex life.
That's okay. Do we want to say that here?
I mean, yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay, so if you're comfortable with that, like what was it about that was not okay? Without, we don't want to do anything that's going to be harmful to him or whatever.
No, it just it just wasn't often. It was like once every 2 months, 3 months by the time we started. I mean, when we were newly a couple, it wasn't like that. But once we got into our like, the honeymoon phase was over, we were dating for like over a year, whatever.
Okay, so there wasn't any like sexual romantic intimacy?
Not really. No, very, very rarely. There was always, I don't want to say not romantic, because we were always romantic, like kissing, hand holding, cuddling, the whole thing.
Okay.
Sexually. But then when we did, it was fine. It was fine. I'm like, no complaints about that. When it happened.
How did you feel about that?
I mean, I was so obnoxiously in love with him. I really, to be honest, at the time, didn't mind it much, because I was like, I'm so in love and everything's great. Like, but it would, in my head, I would kind of just get nervous. Well, like, am I the problem? Like, is he not attracted to me? Like, why doesn't he want to, do that with me?
Did you ask him?
Yeah.
What would he say?
Just like, he apparently, which this was a very bizarre answer for me, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. Apparently, he read in one of his mom's journals that she kept when she was sick with cancer that that was painful for her towards the end. Like, that was physically painful for her. So apparently he had ingrained, because she was so sick, so apparently he had ingrained in his head that he was hurting me.
Okay.
Which is sad, which is very sad, because that's because I think he read that at a young age. Like, I think he found her diary, like read it, didn't really know what was going to be in there. And I think that's like, it stuck with him. Yeah.
So this is the thing. So what I'm wondering, underlying all of this, connection and this, lovey, you said obnoxiously in love with him.
Yep.
Okay, so do you feel that the two of you had your own identity?
No.
Okay, so given that, if I can say this without causing too much damage, but that would not be a perfect relationship, right?
Yeah, looking back now, I absolutely no, like we were too obsessed with each other.
When you say obsessed, do you think that you were dependent on one another for your,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And even when we broke up, he's like, I have these problems for like his depression, whatever. Cause I was like, well, I have anxiety. I like, let's work through it together. Like we can, get through it together. And he was like, you are my emotional crutch. Like I lean on you too much. Like I need to know that I could be a man and I can solve my own problems.
yes.
Even looking back then, I was like, he's not wrong. Like it's not an ideal answer, but he's not wrong. Like,
You feel like you had a sense of where you ended and he began?
um,
Like,
I
were you
I
able
think in
to,
the terms of like as a person,
yeah,
yes, because I'm a very confident person, like in
yeah.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think, and we were two very different people. I'm confident, he was shy. So I think like as people, that line was there, but I think like when it comes to like each other's happiness, that line was never like, if he's not there or if we're not doing good, I'm not happy.
Well,
If we're good, I'm happy.
that's a very big part of your identities, right? Isn't
Yeah.
it? So
Yeah.
like if each of your happiness is dependent upon the other's happiness, then
Mhm.
there isn't a separation emotionally, being able to be okay, right?
Yeah.
Individually.
Yeah.
But
And I
that,
wasn't okay. And
yeah.
that's the problem. After when it ended, I was not okay.
Oh, yeah. And if you think about it, just think about being in a home, the way you describe your home, and then you describe your relationship. What does that sound like?
Um, I mean, it feels like very just in my own little bubble for both of them. Like I
Mhm,
was in my own bubble with growing up. I was in my own bubble with him.
mhm.
Like just
Yeah. Did it allow for separation? For you to be good
yeah,
without them, without him
mm,
to be good without you,
yeah.
right?
And that's what I struggle because now looking back and like learning all of that, I'm like, okay, that's definitely like I want to change it. So my next relationship, I don't want to be like that. And I find it hard because like now the guy that I'm seeing, we dated briefly for like 2 months, but we've been on and off for 2 years. And the only reason that we're off is because we have two very different ideas of what it is to be in a relationship. So like I have needs in a relationship that's not being met. And he's not meeting them not because he doesn't care, but because that's just not how he views a relationship. And that's when I go back and forth of like, well, this could be good for me because it is more independent. Like he's not on his phone 24/7. He's quite busy with work and like I don't get to talk to him all day every day. He's not very romantic words of affirmation when we're together we are, but like over text he's not like I miss you, I love you, like I want cuddles, like he's not like that. And like he'll go 2 days like without even contacting me, and that's
Mhm,
in my head I'm like, that's because you don't care. So if you're not talking to me for 2 days, you're not even thinking about me. Like how can you care about me and not talk to me for 2 days?
mhm.
But that's just who he is. He doesn't communicate on his phone. And he always says, he's like, well, just because I don't text you doesn't mean I'm not thinking about you. And I'm like, yes, it does. Like he's like, that's why we always go in this cycle of like we want to be with each other, but like
Let
I
me ask
constantly
you a
get
question.
disappointed.
I want to ask you a question. I'm going to interrupt you. I want to ask you
Yeah.
a question. When you're having a conversation with him about what he cares about, what he doesn't care about,
Mhm.
who he is or what he is, do you ask him? Do you say, hey, when you're not, very often a woman will define what a man is doing in their own mind,
Mhm.
and then they will accuse them of that.
Yeah.
When you are not with me, and you're not contacting me, that means you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Now, really what the woman is doing is she's asking him if he cares.
Mm-hmm.
But she's telling him that he doesn't, because she
Mm-hmm.
wants him to correct her perception, because her perception is hurting her, right? Would you say that that's what's happening?
For the last 2 years, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a
So
million
basically,
conversations about
the
just that.
question more, are you willing? Now, don't be quick to answer this.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to really stop and think.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what he really feels about you? Don't answer right away. Think
Oof.
about it.
At at this point, after all of our ups and downs, I'd say yes. Um,
Were
but
you
he's a
willing? Were you willing to really hear his answers before?
um I think I was always willing, but he also has, like, communicating is hard for him. So, like, he told me he loved me and then took it back 2 days later. He's like, no,
How
I
did
don't.
he not? What did he say?
He literally told me we were hanging out in person one day, and he told me he loved me, and I was like, oh, finally, like, we're
Was
not even
that
dating. And
really, was that your answer finally? Did you say that?
did I say finally? I probably did, honestly. But I was like, wow, I can't believe you said it. And I was just like, because you don't say, like, you don't communicate these things. So I was just very happy. And I was like, yeah, awesome. Like, and then 2 days later, he was like, I have love for you, but I'm not in love with you. And I was like, okay, cool. So then
What did that feel like?
oh, it was terrible. It's like having your heart ripped out of your chest. You can't do that to someone. Like, that's terrible. So he felt awful, obviously. And then, like, we reconnected, I don't know, however many months later. Um,
What
and
made you
now,
do that? What made you reconnect with him?
oh, because I always reach out. And he's the only one, and it's so annoying because normally I'm a very definitive person with men. And I'm like, this, you do X, Y, and Z. Like, these are my red flags. These are my, whatever they're I'm like blanking on the term. Um,
This
like,
is what you will live with and what you
yeah,
won't. Your
exactly.
non-negotiables.
Yes, like that.
Mhm.
So and normally I have, like, a very good gut instinct of, like, this is gonna work, this is not gonna work. I shouldn't say that because it has not gotten very well so far. So maybe I don't. I think I do. I think I have a good sense of it, but maybe I don't because I'm still single. So maybe I don't. But I like to think that I'm at least, like, clear in my answers that I have. And with him, I'm very wishy-washy, and I'm very like, oh, well, I still want to hang out with him. I still like him. Like, because when we're in person, everything's perfect.
What does perfect mean?
Um, I feel comfortable around him. He has seen me at my worst, like, emotionally. Like, I know I'm fairly high maintenance to deal with all of my mental health, my physical health. It's a lot to deal with in a relationship for somebody who's always sick. I have stomach problems, so I'm either always throwing up, or I'm always crying, or I'm always having a panic attack. Like, it's a lot to
Okay, wait a second. These are
deal
none
with.
of the things that you have told me. Okay, so let's just stop for a minute. Okay,
Okay.
so you're describing having all of these things happening, and you perceive yourself as a person who is a lot to be in a relationship with.
Yep.
You see yourself as a person, when I hear that, I could translate that. Doesn't mean I'm right, but do you see yourself as a burden?
Um, Not necessarily, because I know, like, I'm a good girlfriend and I'm a very good person.
Well,
I
in
just know that
regard to that, being upset,
um
being
sometimes I think not for the right person. I wouldn't be. But I think it does take a certain level of patience and understanding, to try to understand when somebody is in pain, especially mentally. Like, if you don't understand, it's hard to understand depression, anxiety, if you don't have it yourself or have seen it firsthand.
let me ask you a question. What do you think drives your depression? What do you know about your depression?
Probably loneliness, because that
Okay.
it was triggered from the breakup, and I get depressed when things are not going well with the guy that I'm seeing, which
Okay.
really pisses me off, because I hate that my happiness is so affected by men. Men should not have control over shit. Like,
Okay.
I hate it. I
We have
hate it.
just hit the jackpot.
Yep.
Okay, so listen, let's just stop for a minute and think about what you just said. Okay. The pain of loneliness is tremendous, because loneliness is more when you very often when I ask somebody about depression and I ask them to really define how they would describe it, some people do say they feel it as like this incredible sense of loneliness, right? There's some
Yeah,
people who say that. So
definitely.
yeah. So the thing about this is that if we were to stop and forget about your external experiences, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm jumping off a cliff right now with you, okay?
Okay.
And I have a tendency to think that I know what I'm talking about in regard to this, but
Okay.
when we look at your boyfriend, your previous boyfriend that was the trigger of your depression,
Yeah.
um, what I'm hearing in the way that the two of you were interacting, it seems in a lot of ways he was the solution to something that was already there.
Probably. Probably. It
Yeah.
didn't seem
So,
like it at the time, but yeah, probably.
yeah, right. I mean, we don't, all of us don't know a lot of what's going on, around us until we,
Yeah.
explore it. So if you think about, because I'm listening to the things that you were saying throughout your life. And if you were to notice, one of the things I ask people is, what is the emotion that you would say you have felt the most in your childhood?
Yeah, loneliness is definitely a big one.
Okay. So
Or
now
like
I
being
ask
different,
people, okay,
isolation, not
loneliness.
being accepted, like so
Yep.
I feel like I'm craving attention and I'm craving acceptance.
Okay, there we go. So I'm writing this down. Loneliness, craving, like approval,
Hmm.
acceptance, right? Think about
Yep.
it. Why, why I'm asking you all of these questions that I'm asking you? It may feel like a lot because we're like going down a pathway. And
No, I love
we're
it. Let's go down the path. The path
so
needs
this
to be
path
taken.
right here. No, this is a very important path.
Yeah.
This can change your life, Michelle, if you allow it to.
Yeah. That's why
Because
I'm so,
I'm going to tell you
so
what
ready.
human beings do. When I have a client, I ask them to I do a relationship history, a survey, basically an inventory on every relationship they've had in their life, and then I look for common denominators and how they felt.
Yeah.
So the thing is that your description of things, is the antithesis of loneliness
Yeah.
with that man. But to me, all I heard was loneliness. When you
Hmm.
described that perfect relationship, all I could hear was loneliness. It was
Yeah.
screaming at me
Yeah.
from both of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It, it's a solution to loneliness. And basically, we do that in relationships. Very often, we join other people in our brokenness
Hmm.
because it's a solution to brokenness that will never resolve our brokenness ever. So now we speed up. Now, here, this situation. Now, if I ask you, okay, what was your primary feeling in your childhood? Loneliness. When you're describing this need to be accepted, which is a good need, but it becomes distorted when we just feel so not accepted, right?
Yeah. Like it's good because it makes me have standards and I do know what I deserve. And I'm not going to like settle
Now,
for
let me
less, I
ask
guess,
you a
quote
question.
unquote.
I'm challenging you.
But
Do you know what you deserve?
I do, but I don't always necessarily care. like,
So let me. So
like,
then
so
let me.
I will
Can
be
I?
aware though if I'm getting less. I
Can
just
I?
won't care.
Can I? I'm going to be hard on you. Are
Yeah,
you
do it.
ready for it? Are
Do
you
it.
okay with it?
Do
I'm
it.
gonna. I think that I don't think you know what you deserve. I think you know what you're supposed to know.
Hmm.
I think you know what you're supposed to feel and
Hmm.
what would be best for you. But
Hmm.
your experience is showing, your interactions is showing what you believe about yourself,
Hmm.
because our relationships show us,
Yeah.
they show us how
Yeah.
we value
Yeah.
ourselves, which is
I
very,
mean, if we're basing how I value myself off of my past relationships, then I don't value myself at all. Then that that alone would be, yeah. So
I
you're
mean,
probably
it's
not wrong.
okay. This is not about, tearing you apart. It's about, because I'm
No,
going
not
to
at
tell
all.
you the honest truth that anybody who's going to get anywhere in their life, nothing changes until it becomes what it is.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like right now, you know what we're doing? We're disrupting a pattern in your life that honestly, harsh as it may sound, it won't change unless you see this.
Yeah. And that's been my problem. Like, I know that there's a pattern, and I'm self-aware enough of the fact that I know what's going on, but like I don't know how to get out of it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something about how to get out of it. First of all, the number one thing is that you have to, let me change my language. You don't have to do anything. It would behoove you to not look at what that gentleman is doing, not doing, what he's capable of, what he's not capable of. This is who he is. This is what his perception is. I don't give a rat's ass. You want to know the truth? Well, all that matters right now, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't matter, and it doesn't mean that maybe you don't end up with him. I don't know if you will or not, but what really matters is, who am I, Michelle?
Yeah.
Who do I want to be?
Yeah. And that's
How
been
do
my
I
problem.
want to be loved? Now, if you're wanting to be loved is to resolve something that hurts so much. That hurt needs to be resolved.
Yeah.
Internally, because an external solution will never resolve it. So
Yes.
the thing is that a man or will never, I don't want to say never, it's too absolute. A man who feels that he is your solution will run a million miles away.
Yeah.
Unless he needs to be your solution as his solution. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Okay, so now this dude right here, okay, how many times have you returned to him not knowing how he felt about you?
Too many. Too many.
How many is too many? 10? 5?
Probably closer to 10. I'd say solid 7. Go right in the middle. Cut it right now.
Solid 7. All right, so solid 7, returning to a person who you're not sure of how they feel about you.
I mean, now he's at the point where whenever we hang out, he does say I love you, and he hasn't taken it back yet. It's been a few weeks and he hasn't taken it back. But I also, like, I don't know. And I don't even
him saying
know
I love you, do you believe that he loves you? Do you feel loved?
In person, yes. I just don't know. See, I know he loves me because he has shown me that, and I know
How does he show you love? What does he show you?
He's just very different with me than with everyone else. Like, he is way more open with me. He does. The fact that he talks to me more than he talks to everybody else is like frightening, because I don't know how people aren't like sending out like Amber Alerts for like a missing person, because like he must never talk to them, but like he literally, like, he does talk to me more than he talks to other people, and even though it's not a lot,
what do you mean by
talk
more to? What do you mean by talk
like
to?
communicating, like texting, calling, like
what,
or like
interacts with you. You're not talking about having like deep conversations. You're saying text, hey, how are you? What's going on?
He's more authentically himself. So yes, like throughout the conversations we have, yes, he is more openly himself than he is with other people. Like, I feel like we're both genuinely just 100% our like authentic selves around each other. Like, there's no judgment. There's no, like, we're very comfortable with each other.
Do you feel good about yourself with him?
When I'm with him, yes.
Do you feel, so that's interesting. Let's just stop there for a moment and think about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons for those kinds of things, right? So have you ever heard of, you know, in the stage when a child has, they develop something called object permanence? Have you ever heard of that?
I think in college, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like psych or whatever, child.
Yeah, I took a psych class once, and that's just like
what that
is
that, you know, so, and for example, when a baby, when they're about 8 months old, also when a mom leaves the room and they have separation anxiety, it is because they don't know that their mother even exists anymore. So
That's like my
basically,
cat.
yeah. So basically, I want you to, there's some relationship. I'm not saying fully, but there's some relationship to having no sense of, think about a child also does not understand their separation from their mother as a human, that in their own identity. So now that's why peekaboo is such a powerful experience for a child, because here it
Okay.
is, here it's not, here it
Yes.
is, here it's
Yes.
not. It teaches them the permanence of an object.
Okay.
So now, when you're not with him, do you trust that he loves you?
See, I go back and forth because I trust
If you go
him.
back and
Yeah.
forth, then you don't trust that he loves you.
The only reason I don't trust that he loves me is just because of, I feel there's lack of effort there. Like,
Well,
because of how I am used to relationships being, with the constant communication and stuff. It's not like when he's not talking to me all day because he's at work, I think he stops caring about me. Like he didn't talk to me literally for like 2 days the other day. And throughout all that time, it wasn't, oh, well, he stopped caring about me, he stopped loving me, he doesn't really love. It wasn't that. It was just more frustration of, why are you not showing me? Like, I know that you do, but why aren't you showing me?
so let me ask you something. What is it about this relationship that you want?
We both want it to work. And
What does that mean? Like, what
We've-
is it that you want to work?
we are in a constant cycle right now of me always being disappointed because he's not doing X, Y, and Z.
Take note of that. Take note.
Mhm.
Take note.
Yeah.
We are constantly in a cycle or a pattern
Yep.
of me
Yep.
being disappointed because he's not doing X, Y, or Z, right? So
Yep.
put that on the shelf. Don't forget that.
Yep.
Okay. What else?
And
So
like,
if
we
he's
want
in a pattern, then
Hmm?
he's in a pattern of what?
of trying to fix it and always feeling like shit about himself when I get disappointed again.
So does that serve you for him to be trying to fix something that in order to prove to you that you matter?
It's just like, we tried it for 2 months and it didn't work. That's why
Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? Just think about what I just said. Is there something in him feeling
Mhm.
disappointed,
Mhm.
not disappointed, I'm sorry, in feeling that he's going to try harder
Mhm.
to show you that he cares? Is there some value for you in that?
Like, when he says he tries, you mean? Or him being
When
like
he
sad
does
about that
try,
he's not
does he
doing it?
try to show you that he feels like shit, that he didn't do what he needed to do to show you that he cared? What does that do? What does that feel like for you?
I mean, obviously I don't want him to feel upset, and it makes me upset when he feels like garbage about himself.
Okay, let's
But-
stop right there.
Mhm.
Did you hear that? Let's
Mhm.
just stop. How do
Yeah.
you feel when I do that with you? When I make you stop and I hold on that thing that you just said. I feel like garbage when he feels like garbage.
Mhm.
But you guys are repeating it. So there's
Yeah.
something called secondary gains. Do you know what they are?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. How does it feel when I'm doing this with you? Do you feel like you want to kill me? Do you feel defensive? Like, what happens? Be honest.
No, because you're a qualified therapist. No, because I know that you're doing it because you have a reason. If you were just a random person, yeah, I'd want to kill you.
Would you want to like kill me? Because do you see what's happening? What I'm actually doing is I'm challenging this relationship. It doesn't mean that the relationship, it couldn't be a good relationship, but I'm asking you to really stop and look at it in a real honest way.
Yeah.
I would ask myself to do it too, because every single one of us, you're in an experience in a relationship that you're not happy in. We have to be real about it. You may want him, but you're not happy in this pattern that you're describing to me. So I'm asking you to stop. And instead of keep going and discussing a pattern, I'm saying, stand right here on the pattern where he feels like shit, you feel like shit.
Yeah, we both wanted to stop. We both hated it.
Okay, but I want to tell you something about human beings, and it includes me, every single one of us. We have so many patterns in our lives that we want to stop, and we don't stop them. So
Yes.
there's something about that pattern that we need
Mhm.
to do.
Yes.
Okay. So we're doing it, and there's a few reasons. One is possibly because we're automated, because
Mhm.
we're also trying to resolve something that we don't know is there. So there's something about, I have had situations in my life when I was much, much younger where it felt good to me if someone was chasing me and felt guilty, because this way I knew I mattered.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
Okay. So you want to, there's also, like, I can tell you like a million different things that happen to young women. So an example could be like, like a father left a mother, let's say,
Mhm.
a kid or whatever. And then, like, that happened with me. So I'm just using that as an example. So then there's this feeling always inside, like, oh, I have to make sure they don't leave me. They have to make sure, so it's
Mhm.
like this, and you don't know you're doing it.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I ask is that, what are the secondary gains? What are you getting from feeling disappointed? So
Mhm.
everybody would say, I get nothing from feeling disappointed. Yes, you do. You get to feel that feeling. You
Yeah.
get to feel that feeling over and over again, and all feelings want to be felt.
Yeah.
So how come we have to feel disappointment over and over again? Then the guy feels bad about himself over and over again.
Yep.
Then he's got to explain himself, and then you feel like shit because you feel guilty that because you
Yep.
needed this and he couldn't give it to you, and then you don't know
Yep.
what's right or wrong. Now you got a whole pattern going on that's not ending.
Yep. And then he tries for 2 days and he's really good. And then I feel amazing because I'm like, oh my gosh, he's actually trying. He's putting extra effort. Like he's really trying because he knows I was just upset. And then it goes back to normal like 3 days later. And then it's the whole cycle all over again.